hello everyone. We are live. So welcome to Business Survival Kit webinar.
See some people coming in.
Yes, there are people that are coming in. That's great. We're going to wait. Make sure everybody is in. Okay, yes, all right. Fantastic. All right, so welcome again to Business Survival Kit, how to survive and thrive past the pandemic. And my name is Adi, and I'm going to present here with Gitella, and we're going to get started. So the first thing, here's some general information. So I'd like everyone to locate the chat box, which is located at the bottom of your screen. By now, I'm sure we are all familiar with Zoom and with this platform, but just in case, go ahead and locate the chat box and type something in so we know that you are there. Your name, your business name, say hello to us, whatever you'd like. Okay, I see that. All right. You're welcome, Greg. Okay, hello. Alan, hello. All. Hello, hello. Okay, good, everybody. All right. John, okay. Awesome. So you located the chat box. The next thing, next to the chat box, there is a Q&A button. This is not a regular Zoom call. This is a Zoom webinar. So we have a chat box and we have the Q&A box. And in the Q&A, obviously, you can enter your questions and we're going to answer those. This is an interactive webinar. So we would ask you to ask questions, chat in the chat box, and maintain the communication going back and forth both ways. At the end of the webinar, we are going to give you a survey, and we would ask you to please fill out a survey so we can get the feedback on how you like the webinar, and also give us feedback of what you'd like to hear from us in the future. Part of the survey, there will be a box that you can check to get a free worksheet, and that will be based on what we're going to go over today, both myself and Gitella. And then we are offering a free consultation. So either with myself or Gitella or both of us. So just you can also tick the box on the survey and we will contact you to schedule your free consultation. So with that, my name is Adi Klevit. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Business Success Consulting Group. And we specialize in implementing business systems and processes and procedures to make the businesses more efficient. And Gitella, go ahead and introduce yourself.
I think it's still morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm Gitella Himmer with Serenity Tax and Accounting. And as our name says, we specialize in tax and bookkeeping. And our goal is to make it as smooth and stress-free as possible. Hence the Serenity name.
That's right. Okay. Our objective today is to give you tools that you can use right away in order to evaluate where your business is at, take action on what you need to do, whether you have to continue doing what you're doing or would like to continue doing what you're doing, or you need to pivot and adapt the business, as well as go over specific aspects of what you need to do in order to have cash flow right now. Our agenda today is we are going to talk about assessing your business's strengths and weaknesses and learn how to take action accordingly. And then Gitella, that's my part. And then Gitella is going to talk about what is cash flow, how to forecast your revenue, how to create a plan for solvency and success. And then we're going to give you time for Q&A. So we're going to answer questions as we go, but also at the end, if you want to ask us specific questions, we're going to allow time for that. We have actually quite a bit. We have about 10 to 15 minutes because I know that that's definitely important. You want to get your questions answered, so we allow enough time for that. All right, so let's get started with evaluating your business strengths and weaknesses, as well as opportunities and threats, and learn how to take action. So right here, you see, this is called a SWOT analysis. SWOT stands for strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats. So we have that's a great way to evaluate your business where it's at right now. When you're doing this SWOT analysis, do it for your business right now for this period of time. You can do it, in regular times. You can do it to predict for a longer period of time in the future. Right now, we have to make sure that we can control what we can control and take actions according to what is in our immediate environment. So my suggestion would be to make a plan for the next 30, 60, and 90 days and constantly reevaluate those plans. So use also the SWOT analysis in order to reevaluate the plans. When you're doing the SWOT analysis, my recommendation is type it up, have it, or write it up, whatever works for you, but have it written so you can always evaluate and you can see, oh yeah, like let's say in 60 days, this is still a strength of my business. Or now this became a weakness, so I have to add another weakness. So there are more threats, more opportunities, whatever the case may be. Make sure that you're actually including it as part of your analysis, that you write it up so you can reevaluate it. Let's start with strengths. So strengths and weaknesses are internal. So when I'm asking you to evaluate your strengths and your weaknesses, I'm talking about looking internally in your business. Opportunities and threats will be outside your business. So it's the interior world and the exterior world. You have to analyze both. Obviously, you can have more control over your interior world in terms of like the strengths and the weaknesses, but you are affected by the external world of the opportunities and the threats. So you have to make sure that they both combine. And in terms of the strengths, here are some questions. And by the way, this is one of the worksheets that we're going to provide at the end that you can request from us. So you can either write it now, take pictures, or we can email it to you so you can actually use it. So strengths, what do we do exceptionally well? So take a look at your business and take a look at what you're very good at. Not potentially good at, but what are you good at right now? I mean, you could also look at potential because that's obviously a strength, but that's more of an opportunity because it's internally right now, it's not existing in your business. So evaluate all the things, make a list of all the things you're doing extremely well. Okay, so here's a fast exercise. I'd like you to take a look at your business right now and write in the chat box some aspects that you're doing really well at your business right now. Let's see who is going to. Okay. So anyone that wants to add something, like what are they doing very well right now? Good. Okay, so Greg Long, he is a loan officer, very good one. So if you don't know him, definitely meet with him. So he's saying closing loans quickly, even with such high volume. Good. So closing, that's true. And I know Greg, and they have the ability to close loans very quickly. So that will be like something that they're doing very well and can be something that they can utilize in their business. Okay, so another one is creating a community of all members. Kathleen, hello. Yes, that's exactly right. So Kathleen runs Curves in Oregon City, and creating that community of members, that is a strength that they have because people go if they prefer. Who here prefers exercising in a group than by themselves at home, right? Definitely creating that community is a strength that the business has. Okay, and then John is saying connect with our customers base during this downturn. Excellent. John, if you want to share with everybody what you do, that'll be great. We are supporting our current clients during this time. That's right. And Kathleen also saying integrity. That's part of your strength. Very good, Kathleen. So integrity. What I would suggest to do is to quantify or identify a little bit more what does integrity means, right? Because I have my definition of integrity. Kathleen has her definition of integrity. But what does that mean? What is that customer experience that they will actually feel that there is integrity in what you do? So you need to break it down to specifics. So those are good examples because then I can also tell you how you can improve on that. So take that integrity and break it down to what does that mean? How do you actually do that? What makes it a strength for you, right? Because We want to stay away from general words. We actually want to break it down to specific things. And John says, we are supporting our current clients during this time. Okay, so he does payroll. Absolutely. Okay, good. So support, that's a strength, right? Communicating to your clients, that's something that can be a strength. Very good. Excellent. So let's take the next question is, what are we best at? The other one, what do people know us for, right? So what, you can ask your clients. If you don't know, it's okay for you to ask your clients, your patients, your customers. You know, you've been a client of ours for 10 years. How would you describe us to others? What are we best at? How do we serve you best? What do you like about us? Find out. It's okay to go and do surveys and ask others, ask your clients, ask your customers, your patients, what do they like about doing business with you? Because that is your strength. And you might not know. That's why doing those surveys is very, very powerful, because it gives you a lot of information and a lot of data. The other one is like, what advantage do we have? So let's say you have a person that on your team that you train. Let's say you are an IT support company, and you train somebody very well, and they took continuing educations and they got to a level where they can really perform very well. Well, this is an advantage, because now you have an advantage that you have over your competition, or an advantage that you have internally in order to stay in business. Another advantage that you can have, one of your strengths can be that you are a business that is either deemed essential or a business that can be open. So right now, you know, okay, it can be also an advantage that you can have is that you have well-documented processes and procedures. So no matter what happens, you are very strong. You have a very strong foundation. So anybody wants to share with me, what are some of the advantages that they have in their business? Okay, so I will get back to that. I know I can see that some are typing. So go ahead and type some examples of what advantages. All right, good. So essential business, healthcare, affordable and low cost. All right, very good. Good. So what kind of business do you have, Andretti? Kathleen, a manager who communicates with members and provides at-home options. Very good. Yeah, because so again, Kathleen has Curves, which is an exercise place. So that's an advantage that you have. You have a manager that can actually communicate. Absolutely. And John from payroll says, from Prime Pay, so they do payroll, personalized support with dedicated contact versus the 800 number model. That's an advantage, because it's so helpful where you can actually pick up the phone and call somebody, especially in the stressful times. You know, let's say you were applying for the PPP loan and you need your payroll reports for the first quarter, right? So if you have a phone number you can actually call or even text as opposed to the 800 number, that's an advantage, and people will stick with you. Greg is saying reachable with extended hours and all 7 days of the week. Absolutely, you definitely need that. So that's an advantage that you have. So do you see how identifying those advantages will allow you to know what you're doing best, but also will make sure that you do not drop those actions. So for instance, with Greg's example, you know, as a loan officer, you know, you want a mortgage, but you know that you can reach your mortgage broker, your loan officer 7 days a week. That's amazing, right? So you don't want to drop that. You want to make sure that it is documented and it's part of your operations. So that's excellent. Thank you so much for the participation. So let's now go over weaknesses. So here are some questions to ask for the weaknesses. When can we improve? Where can we improve? So, you know, you have to be honest with yourself. You really have to be honest and look at your business and go, okay, we're not good at this and this and that. We need to improve, right? Or what do we need to become better at? So take a look again, like what are the different aspects of your business that, you know, you are okay, but what will it take you to get it to 100? You're at 80%. What will it take you to get to 100%? Because honestly, you have to be 120%, 150% in order to survive. As we said, thrive and survive and thrive past this situation. If you're really good at, you're going to survive this. So you need to figure out what can you become better at and really take an honest look and identify that. And you can ask your team members, what do you feel we can improve at, right? You can ask your customers. That's also totally okay. You know, what can we do to serve you better? Find out what they want. What is not extremely doing well. Right now, there is no time for coasting or moving at not at full speed. You have to be at full speed all the time. And then the other question is to ask is like, what complaints do you get? You know, just like, you know, it's better to know what complaints you get than to just shy away from it. You know, I had a client that told me that he was working for a big corporation that we all know. And one of their key policies was when you get a complaint, find out exactly what it is and just like tackle it head on. You don't want to go shy away from it or say, well, you know, I'm going to deal with it later. I'm going to deal with my satisfied customers. I mean, of course you do. I'm not saying drop everything that you're doing and now you have to deal with people that are complaining or are not satisfied. You do need to figure it out, but not stop what you're doing. But you do need to assess that and figure out like why, if you have any complaints and somebody is not satisfied, what is the common denominator? Even if you're 100% sure that, you know, it's like that person is one of those customers, you know, you always, every business has their 2% or 5% or whatever it is, fine. That might be the personality of the person. It might be a person that complains regularly, but something triggered them that allow them to take it and complain. So that's why you want to make sure that you are addressing that. And then where are we vulnerable? You really have to take a look at like, what is your vulnerability? What are the things that can affect your business? So for example, if you take a look at the cash flow, and Gitella is going to talk about it a lot. So if you don't have enough cash flow to take you through X amount of months, that's a vulnerability, because you know that, you know, let's say something happens or what just happened, or, you know, we can't predict the future. So there will be some, let's say the situation continues, you can only stay afloat for another 3 months. That's a vulnerability. So you need to know that so you can actually take the correct risks. And I saw a question coming in. So let's see. So, oh, somebody just said hello. Okay, good. So that's not a question. So hello back. And then I'm checking the chat. So that's right. So John is saying follow up, follow up, follow up. As a sales manager, trust built through personalized service and follow up. My team does a good job now, but I can always be better. Okay, good. That's right. So that's a very good point, John. So he was looking at, okay, what do we do good? What are we good at? Follow up. That's an advantage. It's a strength that we have. But maybe we're not following up 100% of the time. Maybe we're following up with 80% of the deals. Well, that's a weakness. There might be a flaw here in terms of the process on how to follow up. I mean, that's what we do with our clients, is we set up those systems so that it's 100% every single time. You need to have a process. Like, let's say you realize your strength, your weakness is that you don't do the follow-up as much as you'd like to. Well, then the solution for it is to actually create a system so the follow-up will be consistent. And Kathleen said, explaining why we do what we do and why we don't do, and why we don't do what other health clubs do. Right. So, I mean, that might be a weakness. I'm not sure if you meant it as a strength or a weakness. If you don't do that, if you don't expand what you do, well, that's a weakness, right? So if people don't completely understand what differentiates you from another person, then it can definitely, yeah, she says it's a weakness. It can be a weakness. But identifying it, and then you create a policy, or you create a procedure, or you create a system where you have it in every single time. And an example to that, let's say, for instance, let's take the example from Kathleen. So she identified that not explaining about what differentiates their club from other clubs is something that is not happening. Then what's the solution? The solution is to figure out why it's not happening. It might be training of the employees. They just don't remember to do that. So then we implement checklists or procedures to do that. Or it might be that, you know, they just don't, it might be in the training, they need scripts on how to do that. It might be that it has to be role played. There are different aspects of why, but once you identify, the next step is to ask the why, and then implement the systems in place for that to go in, so it will become a strength, you know. So next time when you look at your strengths, you say we are very strong at explaining to our customers or our clientele why we are better than other clubs. All right, so now let's take a look at opportunities. So remember, weaknesses and strengths and weaknesses are internal, opportunities and threats are external. Now you will see that some of my questions for the opportunities are also the same questions for the threats, because a certain set of circumstances can be an opportunity or it can become a threat. It can also be an opportunity for one business and then can become a threat from another type of business. So let's take a look at opportunities. So what are the emerging trends? What are the trends out there? And as we know, it changes, right? Under the circumstances that we have right now, it changes from week to week. You know, it's whether you're open or not. Like Clackamas County is now open, Washington and Multnomah are not. Okay, so the emerging trend in Clackamas County for those businesses that are in Clackamas County are different than what it was 2 weeks ago. What are new markets? You know, if you want to expand your business, you know, you want to pivot your business, you want to adapt, what are some of the new markets you can take a look at that are working? For instance, I have a client that they are in the cleaning, they do janitorial and cleaning, and they're looking into expanding the opportunities to also fogging. You know, it's like that machine that you go and it's chemical fogging to disinfect, because definitely disinfecting and cleaning thoroughly office spaces is going to be part of the prerequisites for some offices to actually open. Another one is like what our competitors are doing. So again, you'll see that question both in opportunity and threat, because what your competitors are doing, they might be doing it so well that it's a threat for you, but it might be also an opportunity where you learn something new. Say, oh, they're doing this, well, I can do it as well. Another one is any regulations. Again, positive or negative. Regulations can be, maybe you are a service that provides help with those regulations. For instance, you know, for my business, new regulations, you know, in terms of like I help businesses document the processes and procedures around the new regulations. I help business owners figure out their way throughout those new regulations, right? Or figure out how to bring the employees back. There are new regulations. We need new processes, new procedures. So that's an example of an opportunity, a market opportunity for myself. And then in turn, how do you take the internal strength and figure it out and basically turn it into outside advantages? So that's again with the use of smart marketing, with the use of anything that you are communicating, maybe new networking groups, you start one that you can create a collaboration with other businesses. There are different ideas that go around that. And somebody said something. Let's take a look here at the chat. Okay, so good. Yeah, you know, so let's say, for instance, Kathleen said, you know, our gym able to open and implement state regulations to keep our members safe. Okay, good. So you better, you know, if you don't keep those regulations, for instance, that can become a threat, as an example. So you have the opportunity to open, but then as an example, I wrote here too. So emerging trends or new regulations, it can go both ways. In terms of other threats, okay, so what weaknesses are likely to become a threat? An example, we talk about the vulnerability, the cash flow. If you don't have enough cash flow for the business to survive, at some point, it will become a threat, external threat. You will start owing taxes, or you will, you know, you can go bankrupt, or you know, whatever can happen externally. Or let's say you don't pay the rent and you default on your rent, and then you know, you get evicted. Awful examples. You know, I mean, there are examples that can happen, but you know, we don't want to concentrate on the negative. But I just wanted to give you an example how a weakness can become a threat. So you better recognize the weakness and do it and handle it before it becomes a threat. Then you have, you know, the external roadblocks. What are some of the roadblocks? I mean, the business being closed is definitely a threat, but you have to write it as part of your analysis, because then you can create a plan of what to do. Then you can get to the right decisions. I know I'm ending with the threats, which is not necessarily the most uplifting subject, but you have to really take a look at it. You have to look at it again head on. You have to confront this and look at it. What are the threats? Not what you hear or any rumor or anything like that, but really look at what are the threats that you are facing, and then do something about it. That's the main point, is when you have this analysis done, the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats, look at it objectively and figure out what actions you can take or you need to take in order to move the threats and the weaknesses into the strength and into the opportunities. And that is your role as the business owner, or your role as a sales manager, or whatever hat or role you have. You have to make sure that you can evaluate correctly and come up with a plan and an action plan. So the action plan that I'm going to leave you with before I turn it to Gitella to go over the cash flow is take those questions and answer them. Make a list without any, just take a look at it as it is. Look at your business as is. Sometimes it's not easy to look at weaknesses and threats. Take a look at it. Look at really what's your strengths, what your opportunities, and then take a look at that and figure out a plan of action that you can take and be successful, adapt, pivot, so you can actually continue to survive and thrive under those circumstances. And if you have any questions for me, type them in the chat or type them in the Q&A box. But also, as I said, I'm offering a free evaluation. I would love to review your SWOT analysis, talk to you about it. So you can contact me later. And now I'm going to stop sharing my screen, Gitella, and I'm going to pass it over to you to share your screen so you can do your part.
Okay, great. Excuse me. All right, hopefully you guys can see my screen
Absolutely.
now.
Yeah.
Great. I'm new to this webinar, so hang in there with me here. Okay. So I wanted to thank you, Adi, by the way. Those were really great reminders of the SWOT analysis, and even like the internal, what's internal, what's external. I thought that was a really great reminder, and I took notes of my own. So thank you for that. Okay, so everyone can see cash flow. I wanted to talk to you guys about cash flow today, and my goals are to help you identify what it is, help you measure it, and then also manage it. And I'm sure you guys have heard the term, what gets measured gets managed. And right now, in uncertain times, cash flow is more important than ever. And before I start really getting into it, I wanted to share a quote with you. Revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, but cash is king. This is a very wise unknown person. But once again, it's without cash, the business can only operate so long. So we really wanted to dive deep into what cash flow is. Okay. So let's go over what cash flow is. Simply, it is the movement of money in your business. It's what goes in and out of your bank accounts every day, every week, every month. You can have positive cash flow. You can also have negative cash flow. Obviously, the goal over time is to have positive cash flow, and that simply means is, you have more than what you started with in a given time period. Negative cash flow can have adverse consequences to your business. In addition to talking about the movement of money, I wanted to mention liquidity. Liquidity is also important to talk about when we talk about cash flow. And quite simply, it's taking a look at your balance sheet. And we'll talk about tools in a little bit of what you want to look at to evaluate your cash flow. But if you were to look at a balance sheet in front of you right now, it starts with the asset section. And it's, I don't know if you know this, but it's actually organized in order of liquidity. Basically, that means is how quickly can you convert an asset into cash. So it starts with your checking account, it starts with your savings account, but also if you have accounts receivable, that would be listed next, because hopefully you can turn that into cash really quick. And also like inventory, you've got to sell it to get some cash. So those are kinds of the things that would be toward the top of your balance sheet. And then there's also ones that are not as easy to convert into cash, some fixed assets, maybe other intangible assets that I don't have time to really go into that. It's not really the point, but I just wanted to make sure that, you know, when you guys do look at it, you want to analyze the liquidity of the assets that you've got. All right, let's see, next slide is I wanted to go and talk to you about the 3 types of cash flow. Most of your cash flow is going to come from operating activities in your business, right? We're in business to make money, and that would be, you know, your sales of products or services, but you also have to take into account the expenses going out. So, you know, hopefully you have a positive number at the bottom from operating, but say right now it's a tough time, and maybe right now you'd also have to get into some financing. You know, many of you might have already gotten a paycheck protection loan. Maybe you got also, in addition or either, the economic injury disaster loan. Maybe you have some credit cards. You know, you can lean on those a little bit to make your purchases. But those are all would be considered under the financing category. Also, I wanted to make a point that might not be as clear as financing can also be issuing some equity or stock in your business. That's another thing where you can get some money into your business. And then this is probably not common, but there's also investing activities that a business can have. It's actually loans that maybe you've made out to others that you're collecting some interest and payments on. Usually, most commonly in a small business, it could be the sale or acquisition of fixed assets, because you could maybe sell some assets to get some more cash into your business. Right, keep going. So before we can analyze your cash flow, you got to have some tools to do it. I think most of you are QuickBooks users, but you hopefully have an accounting software that has reporting for you. And before you start, I would hope that everything's reconciled and balanced to what your bank statements say, because I would love for you to use, you know, really up-to-date, accurate data. Also, spreadsheets will be very handy, because what your accounting software can do, you can bring into a spreadsheet to help you analyze. And then there's 3 main reports that I would like for you to have ready when you do this. The profit and loss report, I'm sure most of you are very familiar with it, your balance sheet. But there's one that most of you might not know about. It's a statement of cash flows. It is available in, say, a software like QuickBooks. It really, basically what it does is it tells you how much cash you have at the end of a period from the 3 types of operating activities, or 3 types of activities in your business. It would be the operating, the financing, and the investing activities. So that it brings it all together. And another thing I wanted to point out with reporting today was that the profit and loss does not tell you how much cash you have in the bank. So you have to really use all 3 of these reports to get a clear picture of what you've got as far as cash flow is concerned. Because the profit and loss will tell you, you know, how much you made in sales, what you're operating, and other types of expenses that went out. But your net profit is, or your net income at the bottom, is not necessarily what you've all the cash that's gone out of your business. There are certain transactions that actually flow to your balance sheet and not to your profit and loss. Say, for example, paying yourself as an owner, if it's not through payroll. But also, you know, paying down loans or other things that might be in your liabilities or your equity section. All right, I don't know if we have, I'm going to quickly see if there's any questions while I'm doing this. Just a second. Sorry, Adia, I'm new to this whole thing.
That's totally fine. You're doing great.
Okay. All right.
And I remind the audience that if you have any questions as we go, and I will pop in and out as we get questions, and I can help you with that.
Okay. Thank you so much. All right. So to begin analyzing your cash flow, you should start with your expenses. And when you look at your expenses, you want to break them out into 2 categories. There's the must-haves and the wants. Let's talk about the must-haves first. So those would be essential expenses that you want to use or that you need to spend to operate your business. But it's also, importantly, anything that's under contract that you can't get out of. You might be able to maybe negotiate something under contract to a smaller expense, but you have to list it in the must-haves if you can't just stop that expense. And then the other ones are the wants. They're not essential, but you would like to have. And you're probably going to spend some time on this. And what I would recommend is to like run a profit and loss into Excel, and then really, hopefully there's enough details for you to look at and really break it up in the two. And there might be some expenses you might struggle with. They might be able to, they might go into both categories, like, oh gosh, where would I put that? I did want to mention one very important thing, and I'm sure Adi will agree with me on this, is advertising. Where does that go? Right? Does that go in must-haves or wants?
Let's ask the audience what they think. Let's ask that. Let's just do a little poll. Okay, so why don't you write in your chat box, what do you think? Must-have or want for marketing? Let's see what, okay, let's see. Must-have, must-have. Look at that. We have a very, very educated audience. That's right. Must-have, must-have. I kind of gave it in, gave it up when I said it there. Yeah, but that's right. You got it. That's very good.
Okay, good. I'm glad I didn't have to go into too much with advertising. Everyone realizes it's important. And history will tell you too that the companies that survive the downtimes, they never stop their advertising. You got to make sure, and we'll talk about revenue next, but you want to make sure that that pipeline continues. So it's very important with and I know you guys all mentioned that in your comments, to continue to communicate with your customers and also make sure you find a way to keep bringing in more. So let's see, I think that was pretty much what I wanted to mention on expenses. I want to make sure we get through some of the calculation pieces too, be mindful of our time. So then the next piece would be projecting revenue. And much like the SWOT analysis, you want to do a 30, a 60, and a 90-day projection. You might need additional tools to do this that maybe the profit and loss might not give you. If you are a QuickBooks user, there's other reports available. There's sales by customer. You want to know who are your top customers. If they're not specific customers, is it like a profile of a customer? You want to know these things and where your revenue is coming from, who it's coming from. And then you might have some point of sale reports that you're using that could be very helpful as a tool to help you forecast your revenue. And another thing I would say is make sure you're running different scenarios. You want to do an aggressive and a conservative, and maybe a little bit in between. It's a challenge right now to project your revenue because there's still a lot of uncertainties. But at least start with historical data. Figure out what your baseline is, and then you can adjust from there. Okay. So there's a couple of calculations that I think are really, really important that I wanted to spend some time on. And I don't know if you guys have heard these terms, but there's a cash burn rate and there's a cash runway. Now the cash burn rate is what I would like for you to calculate first, and that's basically the rate at which your company spends money, usually calculated on a monthly amount. So what does that really mean? It's the amount of money that you need to always have to operate your business. And then the cash runway would be, it measures how long your money is going to last you. Say you didn't have any revenue coming in, you would figure out, okay, here's the cash that I have available, divided by your cash burn rate, and that'll give you your cash runway in months. So basically, how many months do I have available to pay all my expenses if no revenue came in? And then once again, this is something that would probably be a really good thing for a spreadsheet where you can bring in your data from your accounting software and run a couple of scenarios on this. Really got to know how much money you need to have every month to at least break even. But on top of that, you can run a couple of different scenarios, like, maybe you have reduced revenue right now, but you are still getting some revenue. See what it looks like and take it from there. But this is like what Adi had mentioned earlier, that maybe this is a weakness right now. You're spending more than you're making. Identifying that as soon as possible and making an action plan going forward is really important. And then as far as planning and going forward with all of this is my goal for you guys is to really get to know your numbers. definitely take some time in analyzing where your money's going, where it's coming from. And then really, you got to know your break-even point. A lot of the times you hear break-even point when a company's starting out, right? They're working on their business plan, their financial plans, and they need to know their break-even point. Well, now is also a very good time to know. At any time that you have a major change in your business, you want to get back to the basics and know things like your break-even point. And that's simply your cash flows in are equaling your cash flows out. So you want to at least be breaking even in a tough time like this. And if you're not, there's ways to, access some cash, but you got to have also a plan going forward. So that's another reason why I think scenarios are great to run. Run them with just must-have expenses only. Run it with a little bit of both. As revenue comes back, maybe you can add some more wants. There's just a lot of levers, figure out which levers you can pull and run those scenarios. And then very important, by knowing all of your expenses and your break-even points, you'll at least learn what your revenue targets should be, and then make an action plan to reach those goals and monitor your progress. Once again, it's really, really important to keep an eye on the numbers and monitor as you go, probably more frequently than maybe people have been doing in the past. And then if you don't have a budget, please create one, or if you do have one, update it. Use those 30, 60 day, 90 increments to start. And like I said, at least get to break even and then hopefully beyond, and put in some of those strengths and those opportunities. What I really wanted to mention too is this is a great time to really look at that opportunities box, right? Because where can you bring in more revenue? Are there other streams of revenue that presented themselves that you can forecast into your plan?
Gitella, we have well, first of all, I want to mention that it's when you're doing your SWOT analysis, the strengths, the weaknesses, definitely if you have a budget, if you don't have a budget, is a weakness of the business. You have to write it there so you remember that it's your weakness, right? If you have one, it's a strength, but how often do you look at it? How often do you update it? That's part of the action plan, right? And we have a question, and it is there any good budgeting software?
There are some budgets and cash flow software. So of course, there's also a price involved with those. I can't. Hold on a second. Let me see.
Well, they can also use. You can also use Excel or Google Sheets. Just like keep it simple at the beginning. Just make a budget. It's not. You basically can take your P&L, all the main terms, all the main categories there. The subcategories, just create a budget. It doesn't have to be complicated. You don't have to invest more money in order to create a budget.
That's true.
Right?
That's true. Start with the P&L is a good format. Just bring it into Excel. And then if you guys don't know, you can run a profit and loss by month in, like, say, QuickBooks. And that's a good place to start, because you want to break it down in a more frequent time frame.
Right.
Were there any other questions?
Yeah. Okay, so there is a question from Kathleen. Where can I find the steps for creating a budget?
Okay, well, I can certainly follow up and send out a specific plan.
Okay,
for how to create a budget. Absolutely. I think everyone's a little different. So please reach out to me. I will help you start on the budget.
Excellent.
Absolutely. Let's see. I think I was almost done. I had one more slide to share with you.
Yeah, let's go for it.
And I hope to put a smile on your faces. I can't see your faces, but I hope to put a smile.
Well, we can see the chat. You can send us smiley faces.
Okay, yes, thank you. I love smiley faces in the chat. But just a little meme of Yoda. My goal is you guys will become Jedi masters of your cash flow and your planning. And I can't put it any better than Yoda, the wise Jedi master himself. That cash flow is super important. And hopefully you've gotten some good tips and some good action plans on how to measure and figure out, get that cash burn rate. That's really important. You need to know how much cash you got to be bringing in, at least just to break even. So I think that was I mean,
Good.
there's a lot more I can go into, but I'd rather get into some more questions if you guys have them. Here, I'll stop my share.
Absolutely. Okay, good. And then I'm gonna start sharing. So right now, this is where we are at on our presentation, is our question and a Q&A. So please let us know. And as we're waiting for you to enter your Q&A in the Q&A box, I will share our, as I said in the beginning, the link to our survey. And in there you will see the boxes, and if you'd like a copy of our worksheet for the SWOT analysis, or you want to schedule a consultation with either Gitella or myself, just let us know. Putting it right now in the chat box. Okay, we got the smiley faces. Thank you. People did like the meme. And I'm going to send it to everyone. All right, so sometimes Zoom allows you to open it from the chat box, sometimes not. If you can click on that, if you can actually click on the link I just sent. Do you all see it in the chat box? So just click on that link, and if somebody can tell me if they can open it or not. So there is the link for the Google Forms for the survey. If somebody can say the link works, awesome. Okay, good. So go ahead and click on that link so you have it open and you can start filling out the survey. And now we're going to go into our questions. So the first one comes from Kathleen, and she says, I was lucky enough to get the PPP and EIDAL, okay, loans. How do this factor into cash flow?
All right, good question. So if you remember the parts, the different types of activities, that would be in your financing activity section. But obviously it's cash coming into your business that some of it might have to be paid back and some of it might not be paid back. I know the EIDL loan will, but you have 12 months before those payments will start. So, you know, you want to, when you're projecting out, obviously right now it's cash in, and that's cash that is available to be used for your business expenses. But it's not really going to be an outflow until 12 months from now. So I guess you got to keep in mind that eventually some of these will have to get paid back and it'll be money going out, right? Right now it's just in. With the Paycheck Protection, let's hope all of it is going to be forgiven. And there's, you know, I'm hoping it will. There's an application now that's come out with guidelines on what forgiveness is. And that's probably something we're working up to help you guys with, as well as how to get those amounts forgiven.
You know, and that's one of the things on the SWOT analysis. You know, it can become a threat if you don't do it correctly. So that's why you want to definitely, you know, seek a professional. You know, Gitella can help you with that. You have to know how to record it correctly, and you have to be on time. You just make sure you follow the regulations so you can get it forgiven. Otherwise, it become a threat for the business and a weakness, right? So you want to make it into an opportunity and not a threat. Anything on that, Gitella, or I think we covered that, right?
No, I think that's good.
Good. We have another question. So John says, it's exciting to know you can help me clean up my bookkeeping. Accurate data is so important. So it's kind of like a statement, and it's a beautiful statement. So yes, if that's a question, yes, we can help you. Or Gitella can help you on that. And here's another question is, are there any other expenses besides advertising that are often misunderstood to be wants, but are actually must-haves? Well, can I answer that one, Gitella?
Yes, please do.
So yes, there are, and I'm sure Gitella will give you some of them examples, but one of them is paying yourself. That is definitely a must-have. You know, it's not something that you should. That's my advice to you as a business owner. You not to say, well, you know, I can just forgo. I'm just going to work in my business for free. This is really important that you actually pay yourself as well, because if you're doing the work in the business, you know, yeah, you can cut your salary if need be. You can, just like you're going to do with anybody else. Of course, you want to keep your employees. That's also a must-have. But do not go into that mindset of like you're not important and you're not going to pay yourself, you're going to pay yourself last, because that can be a very slippery slope. And then, you know, you have to have the exchange back from the business. If you're putting it right now, I'm sure, because we work with a lot of business owners, they're putting like many more hours than usual, you know, busy, working. You have to get paid. So however you have to figure it out, you have to put it as part of your budget, as part of the expenses. Wouldn't you agree, Gitella?
Absolutely, 100% or 110% really with that. Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's one answer. And then anything else you would like to say about it?
Well, if I guess more than any want, everyone's got a slightly unique, you know, chart of accounts and expenses that they go through every month. But you know, for right now, there's some must-haves that I wanted to speak a little bit more on the must-haves actually. So there's, you know, you said labor is important. You can't run without your people. Maybe you've got to cut it down, but you might want to look at like key people that you just absolutely cannot operate without. Maybe there's opportunities to reduce some must-haves like rent. Can you have a conversation with your landlord? Are there some concessions, right? Because, you know, we talked about must-haves, but there's things that you can do to you know, get through and reduce your costs. You know, there's, you know, other examples of must-haves other than labor and rent, which are usually a small business's top two expenses. There's, you know, utilities. Can you cut out some, you know, some expenses there, like cable? Can you call, you know, Comcast or Xfinity? Can you renegotiate? I know some people are doing things like that. There's, you know, oftentimes there's equipment leases. Can you renegotiate some of those? Insurance is insurance. You got to have it, but I know there's lots of, you know, discounts and things that are happening. Talk to your insurance agent. You need to have insurance. This is a great time to, you know, open up a conversation.
Right.
And then I did have, once again, advertising on my must-haves. Maybe you can cut that back a little, but don't cut it back a lot. You want to keep that pipeline flowing.
Absolutely. And I think it also ties into the SWOT analysis, because you have to identify what are the opportunities out there, and then you can navigate, or you can basically reallocate some of your cash flow towards those opportunities. That is very, very important, because you want to strengthen those opportunities. You want to utilize those opportunities. You want to strengthen your strengths, right? And it takes money to do that. It takes resources.
Yeah.
So that is where also channel the money too. And then John, he says, SWOT analysis is great. I love the deep thinking and self-reflection it stimulates. Can we get a copy of the tool? Absolutely. So all you need to do is in the survey that I sent in the chat box, so all of you should be able to access it. Just fill out the survey, and there is a checkbox there to ask if you'd like to get that tool. Just check it and you will get it. It will be emailed to you. So
can I say one more thing about the wants expenses? There's some examples that I had were like, you know, for example, seminars or conferences, but now is a good time, especially if you've had some downtime and you have some extra time, maybe not. It's always a good time to, as Stephen Covey would say, sharpen the saw. So maybe if you're going to bring some wants back as revenue or cash flow allows, is, you know, are there some things where you could, you know, take some to conferences or seminars or webinar, you know, and other things to kind of help improve your skills during this time, to be able to offer maybe some other services and other streams of revenue.
Beautiful.
If I was going to say that, I'd say that, I guess.
Absolutely. So with that, let me just share my screen again, because we are coming to the end of this webinar. And thank you all for participating. You do have, we answered the questions, and then we sent you the survey, so please fill it out. We have, and then here are our email addresses in case you would like to contact us. We're very accessible, and we're here to, this is our phone numbers. And thank you all for participating. And here are our emails if you'd like to access us, ask any questions. And we're very thrilled to help you, that you were here, that we can help you. And thank you, Gitella. Good job. It was very helpful. And yes, you're very, very welcome. And we'll see you in our next webinar. Yes, you're very welcome. Very welcome. Okay.
Thank you.